Most NFL rookies are told to be patient. Wait your turn. Earn your spotlight. Let the league decide when you're allowed to matter. Shedeur Sanders ignored every part of that script and then proved why it was outdated in a single morning. At exactly 10:00 a.m., Shedeur didn't step onto a practice field or into a press conference. He pressed publish. His SS2 logo collection went live, and within minutes it vanished. Not slowly, not selling well, gone. Millions of dollars in inventory wiped out before most fans had finished their first scroll of the day. By 10:08 a.m., the drop was over, and the shockwaves were just beginning. Here, why this moment matters. This wasn't Brown's merch. This wasn't a team-driven rollout. Fans weren't buying a helmet or a logo tied to a franchise. They were buying him, his name, his identity, his confidence. And the speed of that sellout reportedly sent Nike executives scrambling because the conversion data didn't just look good, it looked unprecedented. Insiders claim the buying velocity outpaced athletes who already sit at the top of global sports culture. That detail flips the entire conversation. The NFL has always believed teams create stars, that rookies borrow relevance until they earn independence. Shedeur just proved the opposite. He didn't wait for Sunday highlights to validate him. He didn't wait for Pro Bowls or playoff runs. He walked into the league already carrying an audience that moves faster than traditional sports marketing can track. And this wasn't luck. It wasn't a viral fluke. This was the result of years spent building something outside the league's control, an identity that feels authentic to a generation that doesn't care about legacy unless it's paired with personality. That's why the buyers didn't look like the usual NFL demographic. That's why international traffic flooded the site. And that's why this drop didn't behave like football merchandise at all. It behaved like culture. What happened next forced brands, executives, and even rival companies to confront an uncomfortable reality. The power has shifted. The audience is no longer waiting to be told who the next star is. They've already decided. And Shedeur Sanders didn't just tap into that truth. He monetized it at a level the league has never seen from a rookie. But this was only the opening move. And once you understand what broke behind the scenes, it becomes clear this wasn't just a successful merch drop. It was a warning shot. What stunned executives wasn't just how fast the merch sold, it was how badly the system misread the moment. Nike didn't treat this like a cultural launch. They treated it like a standard rookie rollout. Conservative projections, controlled inventory, safe assumptions, and every single one of those assumptions collapsed in real time. Within minutes of the drop going live, internal dashboards lit up, servers lagged, warehouses that were stocked for weeks emptied before the West Coast even woke up. Sellout alerts started firing so quickly that teams inside the company initially thought there was a glitch. There was. Demand was simply moving faster than the infrastructure designed to handle it. By the time the first hour passed, it was already clear this wasn't competing with other rookie drops. It was competing with season-long numbers from established stars. That's the part people miss. This wasn't a good launch for a rookie. It was an elite launch by any standard in modern sports marketing. And then came the internal panic. Multiple reports suggest emergency calls were made at the highest levels, not celebratory check-ins, damage control meetings. The kind where leadership wants answers immediately, because when supply chains break due to too much success, it exposes a failure in forecasting power. Algorithms didn't predict this because algorithms don't measure belief. They don't track swagger. They don't understand loyalty built on authenticity. That's when the realization hit. This audience wasn't reacting to football performance. They were responding to identity. The buyers weren't asking if he'd won a playoff game. They weren't waiting on stats. They were buying into confidence, independence, and the feeling that this wasn't another corporate athlete being packaged for them. Even more surprising was who showed up. The demographic data reportedly shattered Nike's internal models. Gen Z buyers flooded the site. Women accounted for a massive portion of purchases. International traffic spiked like this was a limited sneaker collab, not football gear. This wasn't regional fandom. This was global attention. That's when the conversation inside the building shifted from great rookie launch to something much heavier. Because if this kind of demand can exist before a player proves anything on Sundays, then the old timeline is dead. The waiting period is gone, and the league's traditional path to superstardom just got bypassed completely. But the real reason this worked goes even deeper, and it has nothing to do with logos or hype alone. Here's the part most people still don't understand. This wasn't a merchandise win, it was a control win. Shedeur Sanders didn't just drop gear. He dropped proof that the traditional power structure in sports marketing is outdated. For decades, the formula was simple. Play well first, earn attention later, then maybe, if the league and the brand agree, you get pushed as a star. Shedeur flipped that order completely. The audience didn't wait for the NFL to crown him. They crowned him themselves. That's why this launch broke internal models. Nike's system is built around teams, legacies, and long-term performance arcs. Shedeur's brand bypassed all of that because it wasn't built inside league walls. It was built online, in real time, with fans who already felt invested long before a contract or stat line existed. This is where the infinite money glitch idea stops sounding like hype and starts sounding accurate. When you own attention before the league owns you, everything changes. You don't need permission to monetize. You don't need to wait for endorsement tiers to unlock. The leverage shows up immediately. And that leverage is what made executives uneasy. Internally, the concern wasn't just supply, it was precedent. Because once one rookie proves they can generate elite demand without waiting their turn, every future negotiation changes. Brands lose patience. Players gain leverage. The league's ability to pace superstardom weakens. There's also a quiet truth here nobody wants to say out loud. Fans weren't buying Brown's gear. They weren't buying the NFL shield. They were buying him. Strip away the team colors and nothing changes. That's a nightmare scenario for a system built on collective branding. This is why competitors panicked. Reports suggest rival brands immediately started reassessing how they identify next stars. Not stats first, culture first, presence first. Because Shedeur proved something uncomfortable. You don't need MVPs to move product anymore. You need belief. And belief moves faster than performance ever could. But belief alone doesn't last forever. The real test isn't whether fans show up once. It's whether they keep showing up when pressure hits. That's where this story takes a sharp turn. Because unlike most hype-driven moments, this one isn't built on empty promises. Hype usually has a short shelf life. We've all seen it. A flashy moment, a viral clip, a loud rollout, and then silence. Sales spike once, attention fades, and reality catches up. That's what makes this situation different. The demand didn't stall, it accelerated. And the reason is simple. This brand wasn't built in a vacuum. Shedeur Sanders didn't appear overnight. Long before the NFL contract, long before the merch drop, he had already been living under pressure. At Colorado, nothing was easy. Protection broke down, pockets collapsed, defenses came free. Yet he kept delivering, not perfect football, but resilient football, the kind that earns trust. Fans noticed that. They weren't just buying style, they were buying toughness. That's why this moment didn't feel manufactured. There was no forced narrative, no league-backed campaign telling people how to feel. What they saw was confidence backed by evidence, and that's rare in modern sports branding. This is where Nike's internal data started lining up with something they couldn't quantify. Every high-performing, athlete-driven brand has one common trait: consistency under stress. Shedeur's appeal isn't built on highlight culture alone. It's built on composure, on taking hits, standing back up, and staying sharp when chaos hits. That matters more than people realize. Because fans don't stay loyal to flash. They stay loyal to credibility, and credibility is what allows a brand to survive its first real test. Early reports from camps only reinforced that belief. Accuracy numbers stayed high. Decision-making improved. The same calm that defined his college tape showed up again. That reassured buyers that this wasn't a short-term flip. It was a long-term bet. And here's the key difference. When hype fades, brands panic. When belief grows, brands double down. That's why renegotiation whispers started almost immediately. The original deal wasn't structured for this level of response. Incentives were triggered in hours, not months. Suddenly, the conversation shifted from rookie potential to market correction. Because once a player proves they can carry attention and performance, the clock speeds up. Waiting 3 years to pay them like a star no longer makes sense. But this doesn't just affect one contract. It affects the entire ecosystem. Because now everyone is watching, not just how much he sells, but what happens next when the league realizes the blueprint has changed. And that's where things get uncomfortable for everyone else. Here, where the story quietly breaks every rule the industry has followed for decades. When Nike pulled the post-launch data, the surprise wasn't just the volume. It was who was buying. This wasn't the traditional NFL customer profile. Not middle-aged season ticket holders, not legacy jersey collectors. The surge came from an entirely different direction. Gen Z showed up in force. These are consumers who usually skip team allegiance altogether. They don't care about divisions, rivalries, or even win-loss records. They follow people, not franchises. And Shedeur Sanders fits exactly into how they consume culture. Direct, unfiltered, personal. But the real shock landed in one stat that sent analysts scrambling. Nearly half of the buyers were women. That number alone shattered Nike's internal models. Women's engagement in football merchandise has historically lagged far behind other sports categories. This wasn't supposed to happen, yet here it was, clear as day. Purchases coming from fashion-forward buyers, international customers, and first-time sports merch consumers. That tells you something important. This wasn't a football product. It was a lifestyle product disguised as football gear. The SS Crown logo played a huge role in that. It didn't scream team colors. It didn't rely on logos casual fans didn't recognize. It stood on its own. Clean, confident, flexible, something you could wear without explaining yourself. That's why international traffic spiked. Buyers in Europe and Asia weren't reacting to NFL fandom. They were reacting to aesthetic and attitude, to confidence that translated without context. This is exactly how sneaker culture works. Limited drops, immediate sellouts, identity-driven purchases. Shedeur didn't just borrow that playbook. He applied it flawlessly to football, a space that rarely gets it right. And once that realization set in, competitors panicked. Because if this demographic shift holds, it changes everything. It means future stars don't need legacy franchises to build global reach. They don't need playoff runs or championships to sell product. They need authenticity and a voice that resonates beyond the field. That's a dangerous idea for an industry built on team-first economics. And it's why this drop wasn't just a success, it was a warning shot. Once the numbers leaked, the tone inside the industry changed fast. This wasn't admiration anymore, it was fear. Nike may have been stunned, but they weren't confused. They understood exactly what they were looking at, a rookie who had outgrown the traditional endorsement timeline in real time. That's why internal conversations reportedly shifted within days, not months. Days, emergency calls, rushed projections, accelerated production plans. Because if one athlete can generate this kind of demand before establishing an NFL resume, the entire valuation system breaks. That realization hit Nike's competitors even harder. Reports suggest Adidas moved immediately into crisis mode, holding strategy meetings to figure out how they missed this. Under Armour and Puma weren't far behind. Their mistake wasn't passing on Shedeur specifically. It was sticking to an outdated model, waiting for on-field validation before committing real resources. That playbook is officially dead. Shedeur Sanders proved that cultural influence can now outrun performance timelines. And once that happens, brands lose leverage. They can't wait and see anymore. By the time the league confirms a star, the market has already crowned one. That's why scouting departments are being restructured right now. Not around 40 times or passer ratings, but around social gravity, audience loyalty, conversion speed. Brands are now hunting athletes who bring attention with them, not athletes who might earn it later. And here's the uncomfortable truth executives are starting to whisper. If this keeps working, the next generation of stars won't need shoe companies to make them famous. The companies will need the athletes to stay relevant. That flips the power dynamic completely. It's also why renegotiation rumors surfaced almost immediately. The original deal wasn't built for this scale. Bonus triggers fell like dominoes. Revenue projections had to be rewritten. And suddenly, the question was, how much is this rookie worth? It was, how fast can we lock him down before someone else changes the rules again? Because this wasn't just a win for Shedeur. It was a stress test for the entire sports marketing machine, and it exposed exactly where the cracks are forming. Here's the part critics don't want to admit. Hype like this doesn't last unless the product holds up. And this is where Shedeur Sanders separates himself from every viral athlete that flamed out before the ink dried. Brands didn't just see merch flying off shelves. They started cross-checking why it worked. Engagement retention, repeat buyers, social traction after the drop, not just during it. That's the difference between a moment and a movement. And the data told a very uncomfortable story. Fans weren't buying once out of curiosity. They were staying, they were reposting, they were asking for restocks, they were tagging friends. That behavior only happens when belief is real. But belief still needs validation. That's why insiders keep pointing to what's happening away from cameras. Camp reports quietly leaking elite completion rates, coaches talking about his command of the huddle, teammates already trusting him with checks and adjustments most rookies don't touch for a year. That matters more than any marketing push. Because manufactured hype collapses the moment Sundays expose it. And everyone in the building knows that. Nike knows it. The Browns know it. Even rival brands know it. That's why nobody is backing off. The fans sense it too. They know when confidence is scripted and when it's earned. Shedeur doesn't sell perfection. He sells belief backed by work. That's why the merch didn't feel corporate. It felt personal. This is also why the brand scales globally. You don't need to understand the Browns' playbook to buy into Shedeur Sanders. You just need to recognize ambition, composure, and self-ownership. That language translates everywhere. And here's the key point executives are circling now. Even if the on-field success comes in waves instead of instantly, the foundation is already built. This isn't dependent on one highlight or one season. It's anchored in identity. That's why this moment feels different. This isn't a rookie catching lightning in a bottle. This is someone who built the bottle first and then filled it on demand. This is the part that separates Shedeur Sanders from every other athlete who had a hot moment and disappeared. Trends rely on novelty. Brands rely on identity. What Shedeur has built doesn't depend on one viral clip, one win, or one season. It's rooted in something much harder to copy: control. Control of his image, control of his messaging, control of how fans interact with him. Most athletes become brands after success. Shedeur reversed that order. He became a brand first, then stepped onto the biggest stage in football, already carrying leverage. That's why the SS logo didn't feel like merch. It felt like a flag. Another reason this lasts is accessibility. Shedeur doesn't position himself above fans. He brings them into the journey, gifting teammates shoes, joking about money, showing behind-the-scenes moments. Those aren't accidents. They create emotional buy-in. Fans don't feel marketed to. They feel included. That emotional connection is what turns buyers into repeat buyers. And then there's the generational shift no one in the league wants to fully acknowledge. Younger fans don't idolize teams the way previous generations did. They follow people. They move with personalities, not franchises. Shedeur fits that shift perfectly. His audience isn't tied to Cleveland. It's tied to him. That means the brand travels. If the Browns struggle, the brand survives. If the Browns win, the brand explodes. Either way, the floor is already high. And unlike flash-in-the-pan stars, Shedeur isn't outsourcing his narrative. He isn't waiting for commercials to define him. He's building in public, adjusting in real time, and letting fans watch the process. That transparency creates trust, and trust is the most valuable currency in modern sports marketing. This is why executives aren't debating if this lasts anymore. They're debating how many others will try and fail to replicate it. What happened with Shedeur Sanders isn't just a successful merch drop or a viral moment. It's a warning shot. For decades, the path was clear. Enter the league, wait your turn, prove yourself. Then maybe you earn real money and real influence. Shedeur skipped that entire line, not because of luck and not because of hype, but because he understood something most athletes never do. Attention is leverage. He didn't ask the system for permission. He built value outside of it and forced the system to respond. That's why this moment matters beyond football. It signals a shift where athletes no longer need to be manufactured by leagues or brands. They can arrive fully formed with audiences, identity, and control already in place. Teams benefit. Corporations follow. Power moves upstream. And this isn't about ego or flash. It's about ownership, of narrative, of image, of future. Shedeur's success shows that the modern superstar isn't just judged by wins and stats, but by cultural gravity. The scary part for the old guard. This blueprint is public now. Every young athlete watching just learned the same lesson. You don't wait to be chosen anymore. You build and let the world catch up.